You ever have one of those days you can't forget, no matter how many years go by? For me, it was the summer of 1986. The air was warm, the sky was clear, and I thought I had everything a man could ask for. A steady job, a woman I loved, and a plan to ask her to marry me that very night. But life, it has a funny way of reminding us that nothing's certain. I was driving my old red pickup down a country road, the radio humming along to my favorite station, when I heard a voice. Her voice, and what she said that morning on live radio changed the course of my life forever. It was supposed to be our 10-year anniversary. But instead of a celebration, I heard the truth that shattered everything I believed in. This is the story of that day. The day I lost the woman I loved, and somehow, found myself again. The day I learned that heartbreak isn't the end of your story, it's just the beginning of a new one. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let me tell you what really happened that summer morning. When the voice I loved most became the one that broke me. I still remember that day like it happened yesterday. It was the summer of 1986, hot and golden, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin. I was 35 back then, driving my old red Ford pickup down the dusty road out of town. The radio was playing softly, that same country station I'd listened to since my teenage years. The air smelled like gasoline, dust, and wildflowers from the fields nearby. That morning, I was nervous but happy. You see, it was our 10-year anniversary. 10 years with the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, Linda. I'd saved up for months to buy her a diamond necklace. It wasn't the biggest one, but it was all I could afford. Actually, I'd been planning something even bigger that evening. I was going to propose. I'd already imagined how I'd do it by the lake, where we first kissed. We'd been through ups and downs, but I thought love always finds a way. I even lost my job a week earlier, but I told myself it didn't matter. Because love was supposed to be stronger than money, stronger than bad luck. That morning, I remember smiling to myself, tapping my fingers on the steering wheel. The DJ's voice came through the static, friendly, familiar. It was the morning memory segment. People called in to share dedications or surprises for loved ones. And then I heard her voice, Linda's voice. Sweet, soft, unmistakable. My heart leapt. I thought, she's planning a surprise for me too. I turned up the volume, grinning like a fool. She started with my name, Tom. I know you're listening. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. The road blurred for a moment, then she said something I'll never forget. Today marks 10 years since we met, and I think it's time I tell you the truth. The DJ went silent. You could almost hear the world holding its breath. Linda's voice shook slightly, but she kept talking. I've been seeing someone else, Tom. My heart stopped. I didn't love you the way you loved me. I stayed because you always took care of me. Because it was easy, each word cut like glass. I pulled over on the side of the road, my hands trembling. Cars passed by, but I didn't notice any of them. Then she said, I met someone, and I'm leaving. I'm sorry, but I needed you to hear it this way. Static filled the truck for a second. Then the DJ cleared his throat, mumbling something about unexpected news. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the horizon. My chest hurt so bad it felt like my ribs were cracking. 10 years. 10 years I gave her everything, money, time, dreams. And now she left me, live on the damn radio. I laughed one of those broken laughs that turn into tears. The necklace box was still on the seat beside me. I picked it up, stared at it, then tossed it onto the dashboard. It hit the glass with a dull thud. For a long while, I didn't move. I didn't even cry, just sat there, listening to the sound of the engine humming quietly. Then, slowly, I turned off the radio. I drove aimlessly for hours, through backroads and empty fields. Everything felt meaningless. By sunset, I found myself by the lake, the same place I'd planned to propose. The water shimmered under the orange sky. I sat on the hood of my truck, watching the ripples. That's when it hit me. I wasn't angry, just empty. Like someone had taken my whole life and erased it. I stayed there until the stars came out. The world felt so quiet, it was almost peaceful. But deep inside, something broke that night. Something that never quite healed the same way again. The next few weeks were a blur. I barely slept. I stopped answering calls from friends. In a small town, everyone knows everything. And soon, everyone knew what happened. Some looked at me with pity. Others avoided the topic altogether. Linda moved out of our place the next morning, didn't even face me. Just packed her bags while I sat in the kitchen, staring at my cold coffee. I heard her car start and drive away. The sound of her tires crunching on the gravel was the last sound of our life together. After that, silence. I tried to distract myself with work, but I didn't have a job anymore. The factory I worked for had closed its doors 2 weeks earlier. So I stayed home, fixing things around the house just to stay busy, but everywhere I looked, I saw her. Her perfume still lingered on the couch, her hairbrush sat by the mirror. I couldn't bring myself to throw anything away. One night, I found myself back in the truck, driving to nowhere. The moon was high, the roads empty. I stopped by an old diner off Route 12, the same place Linda and I used to eat pancakes at after Sunday church. I sat there, ordered coffee, and stared out the window. The waitress, an older lady with kind eyes, noticed something was off. She poured me a refill and said, "Rough night, honey." I nodded. She didn't ask more. She just smiled softly and said, "You'll get through it." We all do, one heartbreak at a time. I never forgot that. That night, I started to think, maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. But back then, I didn't know what that meant. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I started working odd jobs fixing fences, repairing tractors, painting barns. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me moving, and slowly, life began to whisper again. One morning, I was working at a neighbor's farm when I saw her. A woman standing by the gate, holding a basket of apples. Her name was Carol. She was a widow, lived a few miles down the road. She smiled at me, shy but warm. That smile, it didn't ask questions. It didn't pity me, it just saw me. I didn't know it then, but that smile would one day save my life. Carol and I started running into each other often after that. She came by the farm now and then, bringing fresh pies or vegetables from her garden. Sometimes she'd wave from her truck when passing by. At first, I thought it was just friendliness. After all, small towns run on kindness. But then I realized she wasn't just being kind. She was reaching out, and I hadn't realized how much I needed that. One afternoon, she stopped by while I was fixing the barn roof. She looked up and said, "You're working too hard for a man with eyes that sad." I laughed, maybe for the first time in months. We ended up talking for hours, sitting on the porch steps. She told me about her late husband, how she'd lost him 5 years earlier. She said grief doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. That hit me hard, because that's exactly what I was feeling. It wasn't anger anymore, it was just the ache of something that used to be there. After that day, Carol became part of my routine. We shared coffee in the mornings, stories in the evenings. I started fixing things at her place, her fence, her leaky roof, her old Chevy. It wasn't about helping her, it was about feeling useful again. Feeling like life had a reason again. Sometimes, when the sun set, we'd sit quietly on her porch, watching the sky turn orange and pink. She had this way of making silence feel comfortable. No pressure, no pity, just a soul sitting side by side. And that silence started to heal me. One night, she asked me something I'll never forget. "Do you still love her?" I didn't answer right away. I stared out into the dark fields, thinking. Then I said, "I don't know if I love her anymore. But I still remember who I was when I did." Carol nodded. "That's fair," she said softly. We didn't speak after that for a while, but something shifted between us. It wasn't romance yet, it was understanding. Real, quiet understanding. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I started smiling more. I stopped avoiding the radio. Even the old country songs didn't hurt as much anymore. One morning, Carol convinced me to join her at the local fair. I hadn't been there in years. The music, the laughter, the smell of corn dogs and sweet lemonade, it all felt like coming back to life. We walked together through the fairgrounds, hand in hand, without even realizing it. People from town looked at us, smiled. Nobody said anything, but I could see it in their eyes. They were happy for me. Happy that I'd found a bit of light again. Later that evening, fireworks lit up the sky. Carol leaned her head on my shoulder, and I remember thinking, Maybe love isn't about grand gestures. Maybe it's about being able to breathe again, next to someone. I didn't tell her I loved her that night. But deep down, I think she already knew. From then on, we were inseparable. Days turned into months, months into years. Our lives began to blend naturally, like two rivers meeting. She'd bring me coffee in the mornings, and I'd fix her porch swing in the afternoons. We weren't trying to fill the past, we were building something new. And I'll tell you, that's a kind of love I never knew before. We moved in together a few years later, not because we had to, but because it felt right. The house we shared was small, surrounded by fields and old oak trees. We planted flowers in the front yard, painted the walls together. It wasn't perfect, we still had our scars, mine from betrayal, hers from loss. But somehow, those scars fit together. They didn't make us weaker, they made us real. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd catch myself thinking about Linda, not with anger, not even with sadness. Just with a kind of gentle distance. She was part of my story, but not my ending. If she hadn't left me, I would have never found Carol. Funny how life works that way. Pain turns into direction if you give it enough time. One day, I was driving down that same old road where I'd first heard the radio confession. The radio was on again, same station, different voices. I smiled to myself. The song playing was about forgiveness and letting go. And I realized I finally understood it. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about not letting that hurt define who you are anymore. When I got home, Carol was sitting on the porch, reading. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You look peaceful," and for the first time in my life, I truly was. Years went by, and we built a simple, happy life together. We laughed a lot, traveled a little, spent most days tending to our garden and feeding stray cats that came around. I'd wake up early, brew coffee, and just watch her. Her hair silvered over time, but her smile never changed. Even now, decades later, when I look at her, I see love, pure and quiet. And every time I tell this story, people ask me, "Do you regret it?" Losing those 10 years, I always say no. Because those 10 years taught me how to love the right way. They taught me what to never settle for again. And without them, I wouldn't be the man sitting here, telling you this story. So no, I don't regret it, not a single part. I believe everything in life happens for a reason, even the pain, especially the pain. Because sometimes, it's the only thing strong enough to guide us home. It's funny how time moves differently when you're older. Days used to feel endless when I was young. Now they slip by like soft waves against the shore. Carol and I are both in our 70s now. Our hair has gone gray, our hands wrinkled. But our hearts, they've only grown gentler. We still live in that same little house, out by the fields. The same porch swing creaks under us as we sip morning coffee. Sometimes, I catch myself just watching her. The way she hums while watering her flowers. The way her eyes light up when she sees a stray cat wander up the steps, that's love to me now. Not the fireworks or grand promises, just peace. A quiet kind of happiness that fills your bones. On some mornings, we turn on the radio, yes, that same station. It still runs after all these years. Different DJs now, different music, but the same comforting static. Every time I hear it, I smile. That sound used to hurt me. Now it reminds me how far I've come. Sometimes they play old songs from the 80s, and I remember who I was back then. That broken man sitting in his truck, listening to his heart shatter live on air. I think about him sometimes, and I wish I could reach back through time, place my hand on his shoulder, and tell him, "You'll be okay. You'll love again, you'll laugh again," because I did. Life didn't end that day it started. It just took me a while to understand that. People say time heals all wounds. But I don't think that's true. I think love does. Not romantic love for life itself. For simple mornings, for sunsets, for the smell of rain on dry ground. For second chances, and that's what Carol was, my second chance. We've been together over 30 years now. Not a perfect 30 years, but a beautiful one. We've fought, laughed, cried, and forgiven. And through it all, she's been my home. Every scar I have led me to her. Sometimes, when I tell this story, younger folks look shocked. They can't imagine hearing something like that on the radio, or staying after so much heartbreak. But life was slower back then. We didn't have phones or screens to distract us from pain. We had to sit with it, live with it, and let it teach us. Pain can be a cruel teacher, but it's honest. And if you listen closely enough, it shows you who you really are. One evening last summer, Carol and I drove to the lake. Yes, that same lake from all those years ago. The one where I was supposed to propose to Linda. We sat by the shore, the sky painted gold and pink. I told her everything. Every memory, every hurt, every moment of that day. She just listened. When I finished, she took my hand and said, "I'm glad you didn't give that necklace to her." I laughed and said, "Why's that?" And she said, "Because maybe it was meant for me." I looked at her, tears stinging my eyes, and whispered, "It always was." We watched the sun disappear behind the trees, and for the first time, I felt like that circle finally closed. No bitterness, no regret, just gratitude. These days, I spend a lot of time sitting on that porch, watching the world change. Neighbors come and go, kids grow up, new families move in. Sometimes they stop by, ask about my old truck or the stories behind the photos on our wall, and when they do, I tell them this story. The story of how heartbreak almost broke me, and how life stitched me back together with love I never expected. I tell them that losing something isn't the end. It's just life clearing space for something better. Most folks nod politely, but sometimes I see it in their eyes. They're living through their own version of that pain. So I tell them what I've learned after all these years, that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom. You can't change the past. But you can decide what it teaches you, and you can decide who you become after it. Every scar carries a lesson if you're willing to look. I don't know what happened to Linda. I heard she moved to California years ago. Got married again, maybe twice. I hope she's happy, truly, because I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. She was a chapter, a hard one, sure, but a necessary one. Without her, I'd never have known what real love feels like. And I think, in her own way, she gave me that gift. Life's funny that way. Sometimes, the worst things that happen to us end up pointing us straight toward the best things we'll ever find. When I look back now, I don't see pain, I see growth, I see how far I've come. And I see Carol still smiling beside me, still humming that same tune when she waters her flowers. The years haven't taken anything from us. If anything, they've made what we have stronger. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, and if your heart's been broken, if you think life's over, trust me, it's not. It's just beginning, because love doesn't always show up the way we expect. Sometimes, it waits for us at the end of a long, lonely road, and when it does, it feels like coming home. That's how I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, here, with her, with peace, with gratitude, and with the quiet understanding that even the deepest pain can lead to the gentlest joy.